Hello, everyone. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal, talking all things Mississippi State and Ole Miss for the next half hour or so. We're in that overlap season now. We got some basketball to talk about, football as well. Remember November? Phase 1 did not get off to a good start for Ole Miss. We'll talk about that. Big game for Mississippi State as it goes to Alabama this week. Logan, how are you?
Good, Parrish. I'm excited about some morning football. Normally, I guess when I first started at the Journal, I was not excited about morning football at all. But as I've had to battle this the last 5 years or so, I've embraced the morning kickoff and going to get my second one of the year. In November, I finally get my second morning kickoff. The only other one that State's had was against Kansas State in week 2.
I didn't realize that. So you got an 11 a.m. kickoff as well, huh? Ole Miss.
Well, 2:30, but I'll take that. That's morning for me.
Yeah. What is it? 2:30? Yeah, you got CBS game.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Logan, technically that's still not morning, but I'm excited for another morning kickoff. I've gotten to where, Logan, that I don't talk about my excitement for the morning kickoffs too much because Ole Miss fans have had so many of them, and it's unsettling. They really don't go for the morning kickoffs, and they arrive late. And look, you got kind of a mix going on over there right now. They're not filling up the stadium. It was a good crowd last Saturday. A lot of that was due to South Carolina fans. But Ole Miss, a lot of folks aren't turning out for the morning kickoffs, but a lot aren't turning out because it's a fairly average team right now as well. That might be a compliment, at least as it regards in regard to SEC play. Let's say that. We're going to talk football in a minute. Let's talk basketball first. Logan, we're kind of in the same place right now. Both women's teams have played and won one regular season game, and both men's teams are awaiting their openers. State on Friday and Ole Miss on Saturday afternoon. Tell us about the Bulldogs.
Well, State obviously returns 5 starters from last year that went to the semifinals of the NIT, and I think they returned 6 of their top 7 scorers from last year. And one good thing, Mississippi State's going to have Quindary Weatherspoon back. He didn't play in the exhibition game. He kind of injured his, I think he injured his foot or his ankle or something. Ended up being a minor injury, and he's going to be able to be back. He's already started back practicing, and then he's going to be back for the opener. Don't know how much he'll play in the opener, but they play Austin Peay in the opener tomorrow, which will be Friday at home. And Austin Peay has already played a game and scored 114 points. So they can put the ball in the basket and kind of do it multiple ways. They scored a lot of points in the paint. They hit a lot of 3-pointers. So, they wasn't playing anybody. They were playing Oakland State, which I have no idea where Oakland State is. I don't know if that's in the city of Oakland or where, but anyway, if you score 114 points, you can get somebody's attention. You can at least put the ball in the basket. I could be out there with no defense, and it would take me a while to score 114 points. So, this team can score. So Mississippi State's going to have to, bring it defensively to have a chance in that ball game. They should win. I mean, obviously Mississippi State.
Interrupt you here a little bit, Logan. That just made me think of Rick Stansberry back from my days covering State when this Vanderbilt guy went off for like 9 for 10 from 3-point range against them in the SEC tournament. And Rick, in that gravelly voice, said, "It's hard to do that against air." So, all right, back to the Bulldog update.
Yeah, but like I said, State, the freshmen in the exit, Reggie Perry, Robert Woodard, and DJ Stewart, all played well in that ball game. So, I asked Ben Howland how many minutes he wanted out of those freshmen, to start the year. And he said that's kind of yet to be determined. And, I get that, they've got to kind of see where this team is and how much they're going to rely on those freshmen. But, they're ultra talented. So they're going to get a lot of minutes throughout this season and probably get more minutes as the season progresses, as they kind of develop their skills a little bit and get their feet wet in college basketball. But everything looks good. State's very, very talented on the men's side and the women's side as well. Mississippi State's women 88-53 over Southeast Missouri in their opener. Tiara McCowan nearly had a triple-double in 28 minutes. She had 24 points, 17 rebounds, and 7 blocks in 28 minutes. That's pretty impressive. And Yeah, they got a huge boost last night. Andrea Espinoza Hunter, the UConn transfer, was deemed eligible to play immediately. She got her waiver granted by the NCAA, so she missed the first game. She'll be eligible to play in Mississippi State's second game, which is also Friday. They go to Virginia. Now, Virginia gave Mississippi State some fits in the second game last year here in Starkville. They've got a girl that was 6'9" last year that really gave Tierra McCowan some problems. It's probably not very often that McCowan's played against somebody that's taller than she is. She's 6'7", and this girl's 2 inches taller than her. I don't know if she's back yet. I hadn't looked on that yet, but she gave her some problems last year, so that's something to kind of keep an eye out for. But Andrea Espinoza Hunter is a huge boost for this Mississippi State team. She plays guard. Mississippi State lost 4 guards last year, so they're 4 guard starters last year, so they're going to need her to step in and probably play some huge minutes as Mississippi State tries to find somebody to replace all those 3-pointers that they lost last year.
So how did McCowan respond when she played somebody her size, or actually a little bit bigger last year?
Well, I mean, McCowan was bigger than this girl. She wasn't as tall. This girl was kind of tall and slender. But if the girl was able to get down, if there was a set play and they worked the ball inside to her, obviously McCowan had struggled against her. But I think McCowan was a little bit more athletic getting up and down the floor than she was. So. But yeah, it definitely gave her some problems. It wasn't the easy, drop it down or throw it up to McCowan, let her go up and get it and not, put it off the glass and into the basket. She struggled a little bit.
All right, Logan, it's just not the same. We're covering women's teams that are at the opposite ends of the spectrum right now. But the Ole Miss women did begin their season on Tuesday, the first game of the Yolette McPhee-McEwen era. They got a 60-42 win over Norfolk State. I heard the Ole Miss TV guys discussing how to refer to this visiting team on Tuesday night, and they were, I think, leaning toward going with that Northern Virginia accent there, and they were going to call them Norfolk. They said they were up there. They say Norfolk, but that's not how it's spelled. Now, sometimes you don't pronounce things the way it's spelled. So I'm saying Norfolk, but Ole Miss gets a win in their season opener, 60-42. Only 4 players, Logan, on this team were on the roster last year, and one of them, a redshirt freshman, did not compete. So there you go. Just very little experience. This team from day one is going to be all about the newcomers. And Crystal Allen, a guard, a transfer from Texas Arlington, scored 15. She's going to be somebody who can shoot from outside pretty well. And, of course, you're familiar with LaCara Salter, the big ticket. She had 8 points and 8 rebounds. Problem there is going to be how many minutes she can go. She's not going to be one who can get up and down the floor and play the tempo and style that they want to play and play as many minutes as they would like for her to play. So, anyway, a good start for the Ole Miss women, and they are back in action Friday at 6 against Indiana University / Purdue University / Indianapolis. That is a real school. It's where those 2 Indiana universities combine, and they put a campus in the capital. And Greg Ellis, who used to work in Indianapolis, tells me that the school locally is known as IUPUI or Pui Pui. Okay, so I've always remembered that. That was good from Greg. But that's your ladies' update. The men get started. The beginning of the Kermit Davis era, Saturday afternoon at 3 against Western Michigan. It was a good exhibition for Ole Miss last week, 101-52. A big win, a Division II team. You expect that. But all you can do, Logan, as we've talked before, is you play the team on your schedule, and if you're going to be the lead dog in an overmatched game, then you're just playing yourself. It's how do you execute. And there were things that Ole Miss did well in that exhibition and things they did not. The Broncos from Fayetteville State had 20 points, I believe it was, 20 points off 16 Ole Miss turnovers. And that's a figure that Davis really wants to see reduced against Western Michigan this Saturday. But aside from that, they shared the ball well. There were 29 assists on 14 made field goals. They rebounded well. They played defense well. It just looked a little different defensively. Every time I say look different defensively, it's going to imply that the Rebels did nothing defensively under Andy Kennedy, and that's not true. And Kermit Davis kind of took that question, I thought, the wrong way in Birmingham at media days when he started talking about it's not right to come in and say you're going to change the culture. Okay, so what he's saying is that while he emphasizes defense, and his players say that he really does emphasize defense, he wants to make it clear that that there was good defense before he got there. Point is, I think there's going to be better defense now. I think there's going to be more emphasis on defense for Ole Miss basketball now. And I thought it looked that way in the exhibition. I know one thing that Davis is really trying to accomplish is to get his most athletic player, Terrence Davis, to think about defense more often. And, we've seen how athletic Terrence Davis can be, how he can get the ball to the open floor and get it to the rim and finish, how he's very hard to guard. Well, I think he's going to use that athleticism with a little more focus on defense as well, not in place of offense, but in addition to. And I thought he hustled and looked a little better in that area of his game against Fayetteville State. As Kermit Davis would say later, he thought the defense was good early, but games play out, and then you get in a rhythm one way or the other. And his opinion was, as that game wore on, Fayetteville State was just missing. It wasn't that they were forced to miss by Ole Miss defensively, as they had been earlier in the game. So, big exhibition win for Ole Miss. Western Michigan comes in, a team that went 9-9 in the MAC last year, returns 3 starters. So we'll see. Ought to be a decent test for Ole Miss in its first game under Kermit Davis. Let's talk football a little bit, Logan. Obviously, a big game for Mississippi State at Alabama, the 2:30 CBS start. The Rebels, an 11 a.m. start at Kyle Field against Texas A&M. This is a place where they've won their last 2 trips. They won 35-20 there in 2014. And then 2016, 2 years ago, right after Chad Kelly's injury, Ole Miss won 30-29 under Michigan quarterback Shea Patterson in the highlight of his brief Ole Miss career. Let's talk football a little bit. What do you see in this MSU-Alabama game?
Well, I don't know that it's going to be like last year's game. I mean, last year's game came down to the final possession for Alabama. Alabama ended up scoring with 25 seconds left. Came on all. Jalen Hurts threw it, completed a first down and ended up with a 26-yard touchdown to Devontae Smith with, like I said, 25 seconds left to go in that game. Alabama wins 31-24. I don't know that it's going to come down to that this year. I do think Mississippi State's defense gives them a chance in this game to at least keep Alabama under their scoring average, which their scoring average is like 50 points a game, and they're rolling up, 500 points or whatever it is, or 500 yards or whatever, the crazy statistic that Alabama leads in. They lead the nation in, points per game and yards per game and all that stuff. I do think State can probably keep that, half of all that, but still that would give Alabama a chance to win that ball game. I don't know that Mississippi State's offense can score enough against Alabama's defense to keep the Bulldogs in this ball game. It's so much of a different team this year. Obviously, all the changes on Mississippi State's side with the coaching change, and all the new coaches that they brought in on both sides of the ball, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach. And then Alabama switched up offensive coordinators, and they bring in Tagliavola, or however the heck you say his name. But he didn't play in that ball game last year. It was Jalen Hurts' show here in Starkville. So he's brought a new element to this offense, the passing element. They're going to throw the ball deep, and they've been successful when they've done that. I mean, he's put up some unbelievable statistics, the front runner to win the Heisman Trophy this year. It's going to be a different ball game in that regard. So Mississippi State's defense is going to have its work cut out for him against this Alabama offense. But like I said, State's defense has been lights out all year. They've only allowed 9 touchdowns all season. They've only allowed 2 touchdowns in the last 51 possessions of the opposing offense. And one of those touchdowns they gave up was on a 3-yard drive at LSU. So this Mississippi State defense doesn't allow a whole lot of people to get into the end zone. And if they can hold Alabama to field goals on possessions, Alabama's been pretty spotty. If Alabama does have a weakness, it's their field goal kicker. So if Mississippi State can hold them. There's a possibility, but I don't think that it's going to be. I was on an Alabama radio show yesterday, Parrish, and they kept trying to coax me into saying that Mississippi State had a chance, and I don't know that they do per se, but I do think State's defense gives them an opportunity just to keep that game close. And if Alabama shoots itself in the foot, then I guess anything could happen. But I'm not expecting an upset this weekend in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I do think Alabama losing, if that happens, is going to involve mistakes on their part and allowing a game to stay close because of that. And they've been too prepared and too good to do that to this point in the season. All those offensive statistics you were running through a few minutes ago, Logan, to me, the most impressive one is that Tua Tagovailoa. I've been really working at that. I think that's close to correct. That Tua Tagovailoa had thrown 0 interceptions and 25 touchdowns going into the LSU game. That's not surprising that he threw his first in that game. He hung one up, and a talented LSU cornerback got to it because they have a couple of those. So he throws his first interception in that game. A phenomenal touchdown to interception ratio. Really, it speaks to not only athleticism, but mostly to decision making on his part. Also speaks to the protection and the players around him as well, and Alabama's recruiting. Lots of factors there, but decision making by the quarterback being number one. Do you think State has defensively in the secondary, can they eliminate those big plays? I mean, obviously, teams have had trouble driving in and punching it in against Mississippi State, but how do they stack up in the secondary on those deep throws?
Well, the safeties have been really good this year for Mississippi State. The corner, if State's defense does have a weakness or a chink in the armor, it is that cornerback. Not to say those guys have been bad; they're just probably not as good as the rest of the defense, and that's setting the bar pretty high. But Jamal Peters is coming back from the injury. He missed those 3 games with the injured knee. He's still wearing a knee brace, so that's a spot there. He's getting better every week, so he'll be tested in this ball game. And State's had some trouble at their nickel spot. Brian Cole's lost for the year with an injury. Ja'Quarius Landrews, who replaced Cole at the nickel, he's kind of day-to-day and questionable for this game right here. So, and if he can't go, they're going to have to rely on a true freshman in Marcus Murphy. But you talked about Alabama's recruiting, Parrish. I looked it up the 7 Sports. Alabama has 64 4- and 5-star players on its roster. 64.
4- and 5-star players, Logan. And I know at the schools we cover, it's a big deal when you get a 4-star player.
Right.
That's a big deal. That's a good recruit. That's going to increase your ranking. And I think that's more the norm. What Alabama's doing is not the norm. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Ole Miss, an 11 a.m. kick against Texas A&M. Logan, these are 2 teams coming off what I call not come from behind wins, but come from ahead losses. Both of them lost 10-point fourth-quarter leads last week. Ole Miss at home and Texas A&M on the road against Auburn. So both of them are trying to get past a difficult finish from a week ago. Texas A&M has the advantage of being at home, and I do think that's an advantage, although Ole Miss has been a far better SEC road team of late than it's been a home team. The Rebels' biggest conference wins under Matt Luke have been on the road, at Kentucky last year, at Mississippi State, against Arkansas and Little Rock this year. Ole Miss is 1-8 in its last 9 SEC home games. It really looked like they were going to reverse that trend against South Carolina, but they couldn't hold that lead. They did a fair job against the run defensively most of the game. South Carolina just finished with 147 rushing yards, but they got 69 on one run late in the game on their winning drive to set up a short run a few minutes later by quarterback Jake Bentley. So Ole Miss did some things fair defensively in that game. They had a nice 4th down stop, at midfield in the second half. That was big for that defense. But whatever they did good was followed by bad, and they still are allowing explosive plays, and they got hurt in the special teams against South Carolina. They really let Debo Samuel get to him. He had a 90-yard kick return to open the game, and he had a big kick return later after Ole Miss had gone up 10 points in the fourth quarter. He let the Gamecocks start in plus territory, to begin their comeback. So anyway, as Ole Miss goes on the road, they're going to have to try and find a way to stay balanced to give themselves a good chance against Texas A&M. And A&M has been like the extremes in terms of their run defense and pass defense. They are number 2 in the nation against the run, giving up just 81 yards a game. But they're giving up 250-ish in the passing yards. And that's number 12, I believe, in the conference and in the 80s nationally. And honestly, that's an area that Ole Miss ought to be able to exploit if they can protect pretty good. Jordan Tiamu is going to be banged up a little bit. He got his foot rolled against South Carolina, came out of that game a little bit. But we'll see. Ole Miss was very balanced against South Carolina, had a great game until the fourth quarter, when all of a sudden Tiamu was a little wobbled, and you broke your momentum when he came out of the game. You put your freshman in there and had a 3-and-out series. So this Ole Miss team that had 598 yards through 3 quarters against South Carolina had only 18 yards, I think it was, in the fourth quarter. Their last 4 possessions went punt, and downs, when they could have won the game by adding to a 10-point lead. And they had dominated offensively until that time. So anyway, we'll see. If Ole Miss can find a way to get some things done on the ground. They had their best SEC rushing game last week against South Carolina, 237 yards, 141 and 3 touchdowns by Scotty Phillips. A&M obviously is going to be much more difficult to run against, but if Ole Miss can do that, whether by Phillips or by Tiamu with quarterback draw, as they've done a little bit more recently, they'll give themselves a better chance. They'll be in better position to exploit that secondary if they can be balanced, if they can get a little bit done in the run game. But that remains to be seen. Defensively, it's going to be a matchup in the game of 2 of the top running backs, with Phillips, who we've spoken about, and Travion Williams of Texas A&M, who is right now the 3rd leading rusher in the SEC. But the difference here is Williams will have much less resistance than Phillips will have. So it might not look like a matchup of the two of the best running backs in the conference. We'll see. Ole Miss has struggled to stop the run. They did have a better game, with the exception of one play, which helped turn the game against South Carolina. But Williams, he's elusive. He breaks through tackles, and Ole Miss has not been a good tackling team this year. So that's going to be a difficult matchup. At the end of the day, Logan, I just don't see Ole Miss winning this game, in spite of recent success against Texas A&M on the road, in spite of a pretty strong offense against South Carolina. I think that A&M defense is just going to I think it's going to make Ole Miss one-dimensional, and I think that's going to be too much. So we'll see what the Rebels get done in College Station. Interesting to note, there are a couple of Ole Miss ties now. Terry Price, who was a member of Kevin Sumlin's Texas A&M staff, was the defensive line coach at Ole Miss under Houston Nutt. He's still on staff. He was retained by Jimbo Fisher. He coaches defensive ends. The ends and the line overall have been very productive for the Aggies this season. And also defensively coaching the linebackers, SEC veteran who was at Ole Miss last year, Bradley Dale Pavito. Okay. And so 2 Ole Miss guys there on the defense for Texas A&M. Somewhat recent Ole Miss coaches. Certainly Pavito there is more recent than Terry Price. But interesting connections there. And we'll just see. We'll see what the Rebels can get done in College Station. But Logan, Matt Luke came out with the Remember November phrase last week before South Carolina. Well, phase one did not get off to a good start. Phase two is going to be an uphill task. The Rebels will have a shot against Vanderbilt, but they're not going to match up extremely well in that game because Vanderbilt's got a dynamic running back and running attack. So that's going to be a difficult matchup. Strange things often do happen when Ole Miss and Vanderbilt play anyway. So a toss-up there, and they will not be favored against Mississippi State in Oxford. It's going to be hard for Ole Miss to create that good memory in November, especially if they don't find some success against Texas A&M. Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We thank you for clicking in with us today. Be sure to come back next week. We'll talk football, and we'll have some basketball regular season games under the belt too.